A lone hunter took pity and rescued an exhausted pregnant she-wolf. A year later they met again, but what the hunter saw made him burst into tears. Michael was an experienced hunter living in a remote cabin in Alaska. One frosty morning he set out hunting deep in the forest. Snow crunched under his boots as he carefully made his way through dense underbrush. Suddenly Michael noticed something unusual in a small clearing, a pregnant wolf lying motionless in the snow. Her fur was matted and dirty, her ribs visible through her skin. Michael realized the wolf was very weak and hungry. Without hesitation he pulled some dried meat from his backpack that he'd prepared for lunch. Michael carefully tossed a piece of meat to the wolf. She sniffed it suspiciously before hungrily swallowing it. The hunter continued feeding her until she was full. As Michael examined the exhausted animal, he wondered what could have happened to her pack. Normally wolves stay together and help each other survive harsh conditions. But this she-wolf was completely alone. Michael decided to name the wolf Sarah, after his deceased wife. He understood Sarah was near birth and worried how she would raise her pups alone. The hunter knew he needed to act quickly and decisively. He hurried back to his small cabin to get supplies. When he returned with an axe, rope and blankets he got to work. He spent the whole day building a small shelter near where he found Sarah. Michael carefully selected logs and branches to create a sturdy structure that would protect the wolf from harsh weather. Inside he made a soft bed of moss and leaves and covered it with warm blankets. As the sun began to set, Michael realized it was time to bring Sarah to her new home. Slowly he approached the wolf, speaking soothing words. Sarah watched his movements warily but made no attempt to run away. Michael carefully wrapped her in a blanket and lifted her in his arms. The wolf was much heavier than he expected, but the hunter was determined to help her. He carried Sarah to the shelter, quietly reassuring her along the way. Once inside, Michael gently placed the wolf on the soft bed. From that day on, Michael visited Sarah daily, bringing food and fresh water. At first the wolf was cautious, but over time began to trust her rescuer. One day when Michael came to see Sarah, he noticed a curious black wolf following him. The hunter worried this predator might threaten Sarah and her future pups. But his fears proved unfounded. The black wolf, whom Michael named Smokey, showed surprising care for Sarah. He often brought her small pieces of food and warmed her with his body on cold nights. Michael was amazed by the unusual friendship between the wolves and watched with interest as their bond grew. The winter was particularly harsh. Michael continued caring for Sarah, spending more and more time with her. He told her stories about his life in the woods, and the wolf seemed to listen attentively, her amber eyes never leaving the man. The hunter, who had always considered himself a loner, unexpectedly found a friend in the wild animal. One evening a violent snowstorm arose. Michael felt uneasy and despite the danger set out to check on Sarah. When he reached the shelter, he was horrified to find the wolf missing. The hunter searched for her, battling the icy wind. Soon he heard faint whimpers from a small nearby cave. Michael found Sarah lying on cold stones. She was in labor. The hunter stayed with the wolf, trying to keep her warm and calm. He covered Sarah with his coat, protecting her from the biting wind. Michael spent the whole night by her side, watching as 4 tiny pups were born. By morning the storm had passed, and the exhausted but happy Sarah nursed her newborns. In the following weeks Michael helped Sarah care for the pups. He brought extra food so the wolf would have enough milk for her young. Smokey remained by her side too, guarding the cave entrance and playing with the growing pups. Michael enjoyed watching the little ones grow stronger and begin exploring their world. His favorite was the smallest pup, whom he named Timmy. This fluffy little one was the last to try new things but soon became the boldest explorer. Michael often brought Timmy small pieces of meat to help him grow stronger. As winter neared its end, the forest grew busier. One day while visiting the wolf family, Michael heard distant voices and the cracking of branches. His hunter's instinct told him danger approached. Carefully he crept through the brush and saw armed men following wolf tracks in the melting snow. Michael eavesdropped on their conversation. They said they'd been tracking a wolf pack for several days. The hunters worried the wolves might attack livestock or people. Hearing the threat to Sarah and her family, Michael knew he had to act immediately. He rushed back to the cave where the wolves lived. Sarah was already herding her pups deep inside, while Smokey took a defensive position at the entrance. Michael heard the hunters' voices drawing nearer. When they reached the clearing, he boldly stepped in front of the cave, shielding the wolf family. "These wolves are under my protection," Michael declared firmly, looking the surprised hunters in the eye. Startled, they lowered their rifles. One of them recognized Michael and asked why he protected the gray predators. The hunter took a deep breath. knowing his next words would determine the fate of Sarah and her family. Michael began recounting how he had found the dying she-wolf and helped her survive the harsh winter. He told of the pup's birth and the extraordinary friendship that had developed between him and the wild animals. His voice was full of sincerity and conviction. Michael invited the hunters to see for themselves that the wolves posed no threat. Cautiously, the hunters approached the cave. At that moment, curious Timmy poked his head out. The men watched in amazement as the little wolf pup walked over to Michael and trustingly rubbed against his hand. The suspicion and fear on the hunters' faces gave way to astonishment. They were amazed by Michael's compassion and the unique bond between man and wolves. "I've never seen anything like this," admitted one hunter, shaking his head. Michael seized the moment and explained that these wolves were just a family trying to survive. He assured the hunters he would keep close watch and guarantee they stayed away from farms and weren't dangerous to people. After lengthy discussion, the lead hunter agreed to leave the wolves alone, but demanded Michael take responsibility for them. The hunter gladly agreed, knowing he had just become the pack's true protector. When the hunters left, Michael turned to the cave. Sarah and Smokey stood at the entrance, their amber eyes meeting the man's gaze. In that moment, the hunter realized how profoundly these remarkable creatures had changed his life. When spring came, Michael knew it was time to let Sarah and her family return to the wild. It was a difficult decision, but he knew it was best for their survival. One morning, the hunter went to the cave to say goodbye. Sarah and the pups were already outside enjoying the warm sunlight. Michael approached slowly, overwhelmed by emotion. The she-wolf wagged her tail in greeting while the grown pups played at her feet. The hunter knelt down and let the pups come to him one last time. Each in turn rubbed their nose against Michael's hand as if saying farewell. Timmy, who had become the hunter's favorite, stayed longer than the others. Michael gently stroked his head, trying to hide the tears welling in his eyes. Finally, he turned to Sarah. He scratched her gently behind the ears, thanking her for her trust and for showing him a new side of nature he hadn't known before. Sarah licked Michael's hand as if understanding the moment's significance. Then she gave a soft bark, calling her pups to her. They gathered around, ready to depart. Michael stood and stepped back to give them space. "It's time for you to be wild again," he said, voice trembling. Sarah cast one last look at her rescuer before leading her family into the woods. Smokey followed after a brief pause. Michael remained on the clearing long after, listening to their fading footsteps, filled with both sadness and peace. Returning to his cabin, the hunter took out his notebook and began writing the story of his remarkable friendship with the wolves. He realized this adventure had forever changed his view of the forest and its inhabitants. A year passed. On an autumn day while gathering berries, Michael heard a familiar sound, a wolf's howl, but with something special about it. His heart raced as he scanned the area. At the clearing's edge, a breathtaking sight met his eyes. Sarah, more beautiful and stronger than ever, with 5 adult wolves, her now-grown pups and faithful Smokey. Sarah's howl echoed through the woods. She seemed to recognize the place where Michael had once saved her life. The familiar surroundings likely stirred memories, and she instinctively called to him. Tears filled Michael's eyes as he observed the wolf family healthy and happy. For a moment, Sarah's gaze met the hunter's, and he felt she remembered him and the kindness he'd shown a year earlier. Sarah howled again, and this time her grown children joined in. Their voices blended into a beautiful, wild chorus that sent shivers down Michael's spine. He laughed and cried simultaneously, overwhelmed by this unexpected reunion. The hunter noticed one wolf behaving differently from the others. He recognized grown Timmy, who had retained his playful nature. Timmy took a few steps toward Michael as if remembering the man who had once cared for him. For a few precious moments, the wolf family lingered at the clearing's edge, as if giving Michael time to see they were well. The hunter noted Smokey remained by Sarah's side, proving their unusual friendship had stood the test of time. Then Sarah turned as if at some silent command and walked into the forest. Her children and Smokey followed. Timmy lingered a moment longer, casting one last look at Michael before disappearing into the thicket after the others. As the wolves vanished from sight, Michael's heart swelled with joy and pride. He had always seen himself as just a simple hunter, but now understood he had become part of something much greater. His kindness and compassion hadn't just saved Sarah and her pups, they had forever changed him in ways he could never have imagined.